I thank Perrier Screen and the administrators, the people behind Perrier Screen for giving me this opportunity. Though I am not well trained to talk about ancient Indian history, but it has prompted me to look into this important area where we are in the context or in the middle of, competing propositions. We are in a competition for proposing the finest rulers. They could be mythical, they could be historical in this country. But if you look at what is happening now, that we are not caring whether they are mythical or historical. We are just trying to trying to subscribe to some idea and then see if it only has the ability to offer certain cultural and political capital. We are not worrying much about the historicity of the personalities who are proposing. Say, for example, Ramaraja, whether it is historical or not, some of its debate we know. But however, there is visible confusion that is created among the national citizens of this country, that you need not have to worry about historicity of these personalities, but what you should worry about, what you should think about, is that how good they are in the text, that description of those individuals in the text. So therefore, apart from those descriptions, what we are, imposed descriptions or narratives on those individuals. So we are just as they are available in the text, we are not adapting them. We are refining them according to our own context. Anyway, so the picture that you see on the screen is Mahabali in a context where the Aryan Brahmins are talking about, or the the majoritarian ideologues are talking about Ramaraja. Shouldn't we talking about Baliraja? So when you compare these two concepts, so which has the better sounding in terms of welfare state? We all know that, if you know Baliraja or if you know Rama, you know that when comparing these two models, you will be able to understand what is the option you have in front of you. So anyway, this is one picture, that earlier picture that's I shown to you, is a picture or the narrative, the description of an Asura is presented to you in the Vedic Puranic text. And for a long time, the Malayalis went along with that description and the narrative of Baliraja. So they did not worry about whether he should be a person who fits to the description of a Kshatriya, with the well-fit body and all that. So only in 2017, they have reframed Baliraja into a finest Kshatriya, well-built body of no mythological sort of characters. So what I see here is that Kerala consciously made efforts to historicize Baliraja or Mahabali by eliminating the characters, the mythical characters, in terms of though Baliraja is a bit decent compared to that of Narakasura, Mahasasura, and Ravana, yet the pot-bellied and the person you need to be reworked. So they reworked and then presented to Malayalis that if you are admiring your ruler, whose ruling was fantastic, and he was appreciated as one of the persons who must have been leading one of the welfare state at that point in time. So he must fit to the perception of the people in the modern times. So therefore, they reworked and then they presented this to Malayalis. So they removed Pat Bali and the rest of the characters. Of course, a typical Malayali with no upper part of the body covered. So this reworking is actually happening in 2017. That itself gives us an indication that along the Dalit Bahujan, though Kerala cannot locate Kerala into a Dalit Bahujan Adivasi, identity. However, we talk about that later. So what I am trying to emphasize is that the reworking of ASURA to fit him to the present context, locate him into the present context, is something that is we need to look into, and we need to understand why at this particular point in time it is happening. So apart from this, you also have this mythical characters of all these heads and hands. Even till today, many of us, the only few handful of scholars, which is of course increasing, the body of scholars is increasing, the body of literature which is involved in counter narratives on these are increasing. However, India as a majority Hindu community, majority of Hindu community are in agreement with this kind of concept, mythological concept of Ravana. And this is more of, if you look at this picture, this is in Telugu called Dishtiboma, but is also a sort of Asura or Rakshasa. This picture tells you that two important parts, that Rakshasas are the gatekeepers of the mythical or the mythological empires, or at the fortress. The Rakshasas' position is decided as the gatekeepers. Apart from that, here what is very important, that the everydayness of Rakshasa. So in every home, in front of every home, you see this portrait is hanging, made in different printed form, or as well as made out of pottery, clay pot, clay things, made out of clay. These kind of frames, or this kind of figure, are hanged most of throughout India. So this what I am trying to say, that there is a certain kind of everydayness to Asura. So that everydayness is there to Devas, not as Suras but as Devas. But if you look at the everydayness of Asura or Rakshasa and everydayness of Deva, you will find the difference between how the everydayness has different kind of meanings. What kind of meaning the Rakshasa has in everydayness or everyday language of the general public, or even literary people, how they use the word Rakshasa, when they use the word Rakshasa, what is the context that they're trying to point out when they use the word Rakshasa. So that everydayness is actually very important to look at. So this picture tells that how Rakshasa, though it is a mythical character, but everydayness is provided to this Rakshasa with the intention of not allowing the mythical characters, or that is bad, evil, demonic characters that are allotted to them, are continued to stay with them into the future also. So if you say someone is Rakshasa, what is Rakshasa? Is devil, is evil, is torturous, such kind of virtues are added to them, even till today that exist in different ways and different means, and and even in the common language, these words are very popular. So this binary, Arya Sura binary, you also know, and there is a particular ideological shift in this. Both Periyar and Pule and Ambedkar talked about Narasimha, that we talk about later. And this full-length article on this you can see in this volume that is coming in September next month. So coming back to the idea of Asura as a cultural identity of Dalit Bahujan Adivasis. See, at present, we are seeing different versions of ASURA, not single version, different versions of ASURA. So what are the Vedic, Puranic, mythical, ahistorical ASURA as a literary category, Dalit Bahujan Adivasi ASURA as a historical category, Vedic, Puranic, mythical, and popular ASURA as a ahistorical and cultural category, Neo-Brahmin mythical ASURA as a neo-literal category. So I just worked out these categories. I'm not whether I'm clear about them or not, I do not know. But let me go on to explain what are they, why I have went on to such categorization that is existing simultaneously throughout the time. The historical category of Dalit Bahujan Adivasi ASURA is recent. But the first category I'm talking about, that Puranic, mythical, ahistorical ASURA, as a literary category, we all know it is a literary category. It's a mythical category. They exist in literature, but does not mean that they are not historical. They are historical. According to Periyar and Ambedkar, both Aryans and Dravidians, or the pre-Aryan indigenous rulers, are historical, but their mythicization is a conspiracy. Both of them agree to that point, that mythicization is conspiracy. So, however, as it exists in the literature, we need to talk about them as a historical and a literary category. So, they are not historical as far as the Puranic and mythical texts are concerned. So, the politics behind the mythicization of and the Dravidian kings is understandable, and also the mythicization of Asuras, that is Aryans, is also understandable. Both Periyar and Ambedkar, both Pule and Ambedkar agreed to the point that with the intention of trying to camouflage or cover up the massacre of the Dravidian rulers, the mythicization has adapted by the people who had the command over the Sanskrit language. That is, both of them agreed to that. Then coming to Dalit Bahujan Adivasi ASURA as a historical category, it's a counter to the mythicized ahistorical literary category. So what Pule, Ambedkar, Periyar, even to lesser extent Narayana Guru's Sahodaran Ayyappan were doing, they are trying to release Asuras or the Dravidas from the mythicization. They're countering. So this countering is not today, though, at mass level as a conscious, conscious mass. The Dalit Bahujan Adivasis combinedly started a movement in 2011, but counter to the Puranic and mythical narratives of Sura and Asura are not new. They were there in the 19th century, they were there in the 20th century. So 19th century Pule started, Ambedkar and Periyar started in 20th century. So all these people, all these the ideologues of the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis are trying to release Asura from the mythical clutches. The descriptions given to them are not suitable to be human rulers, and the characters that are added are demonic. So demonization of Asura is a conspiracy, a socio-cultural conspiracy. So from which these ideologues, the ancestors of today, Dalit Bahujan Adivasis, the ideological intellectual ancestors of today's Dalit Bahujan Adivasis have worked on them. They produced counter narratives, so that we are using to build the counter culture. So why I'm referring to counter culture? Building of the culture is impossible if you do not have history. Even without history, with a history, people are being made believe that is history, and the culture is being built that is being equated to the national culture, and political capital and cultural capital and religious capital is being generated out without any shame and guilt. So if that is the case, if you are trying to build the alternative identities that are very necessary to build the identities, first of all, to realize your goals of socio-cultural and political freedom or democracy or equality. How do you do that without history? So if you are realizing in 2011 or a little earlier that it is important to build your own history, read it, your own history, where will you get? So you have to look into the works that are already done by the intellectual ancestors of Dalit Bahujan Adivasis. So they are Pule, Ambedkar, Ramaswamy Naikar, and Narayana Guru, Ayyappa Sahodara. So all these intellectuals have already built narratives, and these narratives are very important to fall back and then try to rework on them, then try to reproduce them, try to analyze them and present to the body of the constituency. Today that we are looking at the conscious Dalit Bahujan Adivasi constituency, which is emerging into a bigger conscious socio-political constituency. That constituency need to be informed about, informed because that they are actually going along with the narratives and the images of ASURA that are already produced and provided and made and normalized by the majoritarian culture, majoritarian forces. So we need to make them understand, look, these are not the images and the images in history or the description of the characters that you need to fall back. You need to understand that these are the actual images and descriptions of Asura. They are not they are not Rakshasas, they are not Asuras. So they are historical personalities who are mythicized, who are transformed into Asura, who are transformed into Rakshasa. So therefore, the larger constituency that is emerging as a larger socio-political constituency, which could be powerful in achieving the socio-economic and political independence or equality in this country. That constituency need to be informed that about the images or the narratives that are already produced by the intellectual ancestors of the today's Adivasis, Dalits, Adivasi Bahujans. Now, third category I am looking at is the Vedic, Puranic, mythical, and popular Asura as a ahistorical cultural category. So, what is this? Now, I have already talked about the first category. First category stays as a literary category. Not many people would understand unless and until they are capable of reading the original text. Based on the original text, popular Asura is that these Asuras exist in short stories, plays, novels, rituals, festivals, cinema, TV serial, portrait, pictures, statues, and in our common daily language. That I've already shown you a picture of, Dishtibamma in Telugu, they called it's a head of Rakshasa. So this popular Asura is much more powerful in a sense that the everydayness that I have already talked about. This Asura exists every day. When you wanted to abuse someone, it becomes a swear word. When you wanted to insult someone, it becomes a word that you can employ. So you wanted to point out that that person is violent, you can use Rakshasa. So this ahistorical cultural category, popular Asura, still it's Vedic, Puranic. And this is much more dangerous because it exists among the common people. To counter this popular Asura is very difficult. You may not say that, though it is very similar to that of the Vedic, Puranic, literary Asura, but this popular Asura is gone into the minds of the people. It is very difficult to produce any counter narratives to this because it exists among the common people. Common people already got into that, and then to even Dalits and Adivasis, Bahujans, many of them do not find problem with this popular Asura because as I told you, or many of you know that this popular Asura is part of their culture, because they got entangled with the culture of majority, and to come out of that they try to imagine Asura in a different way, or to find problem with an Asura who is being told by a director in cinema, or a director in a TV serial, or a playwright. It will be very difficult, because they believe that they have the ability of retelling the truth that was already there in the historical past. So they would not believe that someone is intentionally trying to reproduce the characters of Asura. They're trying to provide the continuity to the Vedic Asura as a bad man, as a evil or a demonic person. So how many people would have, especially I'm talking about the people who are uneducated, majority of our people are uneducated. So they were not even educated. I am telling about even Dalits are using the word Asura, Asura Rajyam, for example. Asura Rajyam, if they've used, in fact, I came across a song which was written against the Chunduru Dalit massacre. So in that, the writer was using the Asura Rajyam, Asura Rajyam. So Asura Rajyam was referring a kingdom of Rakshasas, where the Dalits are being punished, or Dalits being discriminated, or Dalits being tortured, or Dalits being killed. So I'm not blaming the writer here who used the word Asura in the song, which is actually a song of protest against the Sunduru Dalit massacre. So I'm just mentioning that how even Dalits, without knowing that they're using the word Rakshasa or Asura, who belongs to their history or their ancestors, even the literary people, educated people are using the word. So therefore, without understanding who Asura is, what Rakshasa is, so it is not to blame them, but to tell them how the popular Asura is made to exist. That is also a sort of a strategy, a political cultural strategy. So the popular Asura is made to exist among the people. So the common people would not understand what is it. So they go along with the already provided narratives, they already provided images. So even a Dalit building a home, they will hang up this Distiboma of Rakshasa. So even a Dalit writing a poem or a song, they will be using Rakshasa. So this is the constituency where we need to look at if this constituency reached, and this constituency to be talked about, to be transformed into a constituency which understands what is Rakshasa, what is Asura. So that means it takes some time, but however, this constituency is very important, because the popular culture in India is continuously trying to impose narratives of its own. The majoritarian forces are trying to impose the narratives of its own through various ways and means, and it is difficult for many people to understand the politics of imposing these narratives and trying to counter them. So the counter narratives that we are talking about, or the counter culture that we are talking about, is built and built by those a handful of very minority of the intellectuals belongs to Dalit Bahujan Adivasis, but that is not the case with the larger sections of the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis. They are still under the impression that the Rakshasa is a Rakshasa, a demonic person, a bad person, an evil person. So Asura is same. So therefore, it is this area which is very dangerous for my understanding, where even small kids through Chota Bheem or Little Krishna, where they at very young age, child days, so they were going bombarded with these images of Asura. So a small little Krishna can fight with a well-built, strong Asura. He can just push him into a way with a little finger. So this kind of imposition of the narratives of Asura, reproduction of Asura, continuously reproducing Asura. You can see domestic sphere in this country, especially ladies, when they look at the serials. The number of serials and the myths today, mythical narratives, legends are plenty. So, and then reimaging also happening with the new technology. That reimaging is very important area to look at. Even you have the postmodern reimaging, digital reimaging of Asura. So here the imagination has no limits. So as many as bad characters, you can you will ugly characters and looks you can add with the technology. So this popular Asura historical cultural category is very important. Of course, the electronic Asura. Those kind of images we can also understand. So how the now, apart from that, Neo-Brahmin mythical Asura as a neo-literary category. Now, this category is coming back after the counter has started. After the counter has started by the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis, the Brahmins who are the custodians of the Vedic Puranic literary category of Asura or the Sura are trying to reduce the intensity of the counter. Are they producing the counter to the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi counter, saying that look, Asuras are the are same in the Vedic and Puranic texts. So Asuras we imagined as evil and demonic category of recent times. So they are both sons of Kashyapa, Prajapati. So therefore they are not different. Only in the process of fighting for the power, one has become bad, one has gone out of the path, the holy path. They are not doing any prayers, while the Asuras followed the path of holy clan, and the Asuras have gone out of it. So in the fight between them, only the one has become bad, one is continued to be good. So there is nothing bad about Asura that we are talking about. So this category, Neo-Brahmin mythical Asura is literary Asura is coming again in the writings of this today people who are countering the counter by trying to present that there is no problem. It is not the problem of the Vedic Puranic texts. It's a problem that is interpretation. So in actuality, they are not so. Not only that, if you look at, even people are trying making conscious efforts in order to reduce the intensity or reduce the anger that is inbuilt around the demonization of Narakasura, Mahishasura, Ravana. Say, for example, after the Bhumi Puja of Rama temple in Agra, Saraswati Brahmins are trying to say, they have gone to the extent of openly saying that we do not appreciate burning the effigy of Ravana. So he is one of us, and he did some mistake long ago. Why are we keep burning every year? So that is unfair. So this sort of a softened version of the Neo-Brahmanic narratives has some amount of politics in that. Why are they doing it? They were not saying that Ravana is not a bad man in the time where he was existing. They were one side, they were saying that he made a mistake. So that means they are saying that he was a bad person. So, but why are we continuing to punish him? So first of all, he is not a mortal person. We are not punishing him. He is not going through the physical ordeals or physical torture anyway. So, but however, the way they build narratives to counter the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi narratives are very difficult to understand, but we need to understand them. So why are they doing it? Why all of a sudden showing some amount of love and concern on Ravana after the foundation stone laid for Ram temple? So how do you understand that? Why are they expressing after that? So they can sense that there will be certain amount of anger, and that anger need to be countered by a narrative. That narrative is, look, that person did something wrong ago, some centuries ago, some thousands of years ago. So why are we still punishing? So he is one of us. We should So this is a model of appropriation of Ravana into the larger story and trying to eliminate the not the negativity that is allotted to Ravana in the early times, but to counter the anger that is existing among the people who are claiming his identity as their identity. So that is what is happening. So this is also need to be looked at. So this category is also emerging at this point in time. So how these counter narratives are built. So counter narratives to the already existing dominant mythical and Puranic narratives of Asura and Rakshasa. First is that they would oppose the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis intellectuals. They would oppose the Puranic and Vedic descriptions or the construction of Asura and Asura. Then they ask for a cultural separation. They initiate the process of cultural separation, and then in the third stage, in the second stage, they initiate the process of cultural separation. They look at the process of cultural separation by first opposing, countering the narrative, then constructing the culture. First of all, you need to counter the narrative to construct the counter culture. So first, in the first phase, the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi intellectuals would attack that's what Phule, Ambedkar, Periyar did. They attack the narratives, majoritarian narratives, and then they build the counter narratives. Based on the counter narratives, counter culture need to be built. So to do that, we need to release it has felt on the shoulders of Ambedkar, Periyar and Phule to release the people from asuras and Rakshasas from the mythological narratives and descriptions. But however, the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi larger constituency, only intellectuals try to understand because they have the ability of reading it, but rest, the larger population had no access to those narratives produced by Phule, Ambedkar and Periyar. So these narratives need to be popularized. So first phase of the counter narrative is to counter the majoritarian narratives. Then the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the today's Dalit Bahujan Adivasi intellectuals to popularize the narratives. Those narratives automatically leads to the construction of the counter culture. So if you look at this 19th century building the base for the contestation. So first of all, those narratives are contested by Phule, Ambedkar and Periyar. Then further strengthened by Ambedkar and Periyar, the 19th century first Phule did it. Then in 21st century, as I've already pointed out, today's Dalit Bahujan Adivasi intellectuals have to take it further and then translate those counter narratives into an actual counter culture. One point that the historical liberation of the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis is very impossible unless and until the history is released from the history that is existing in the margins of the majoritarian narratives. That is to be brought into the mainstream and presented exclusively to the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis, that it is as their history, and then try to build the counter culture on that history. Then only the socio-cultural and political liberation is possible. If without, the point is, without history, the building of identity itself as a composite cultural identity. Dalit Bahujan Adivasi identity as a composite cultural identity is very difficult. Why ASURA is, this is very important point here. Why ASURA has that ability? Rest, we have fragmented pieces. We all know that. Dalits Dalits are, one Adivasis as one, they got compartmentalized in many ways, and the OBCs is one, so they got compartmentalized in again. So, however, all these pieces together, if you need to come together as a composite cultural agents or constituency, only ASURA and SURA seems to have offered such an opportunity because it is a larger, it's a larger, there were ancestors which believe that we still maintain some sort of connections. See, in JNU, it was started by the OBC association, and Adivasis in the North India already for a long time they have been worshipping Narakasura, Mahishasura, Ravanasura in North India. So therefore, it already in a larger identity is already available to them. Only we need to make efforts to bring them together. So Dalit certainly claims ancestry to Asuras, and certain regional cultures like Kerala claims identity to it, and in Tamil Nadu, Dravidians claims identity to it. So Adivasis is already worshipping, much of we do not know in northwestern India, Adivasis are already worshipping. There are temples exist for, at this point in time, there is realization, of course, it is only a source that allows us to come together as probably a political cultural identity, a historical identity on which this composite identity of the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis can be built. The rest seems to have, for political reasons, we come back again, go into different ways. But as a historical identity, ASURA seems to have offered us a good opportunity to build the identity on their history. So therefore, rewriting the history is very important. So, however, we might fall into the problem of historicizing the ahistorical. That is, ASURA, if we agree that ASURA is already a historical category, how are we talking about historicization? That is contradictory to each other. So ahistorical cannot be historicized. Yeah, that is true. But the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis today involved in trying to release the Asura and Rakshasa from the mythical descriptions or mythicization need to be extra careful, just not adapting as it is existing in the Vedic and Puranic texts, but we need to be extra careful that Pule and Ambedkar, Periyar have done that. They have raised important questions, logical questions on the illogicities that are quite visible in the building of these narratives in the Vedic and Puranic texts. They have attacked on those illogicities. How can that be? There are different names in different texts, the different positions allowed in different texts. So how there is no commonality? That's what Alberuni also says. When you look at Sura and Asura, Rakshasa, in different texts, different positions are allotted to these people. So how, when there is no commonality, there is illogicity around in all the texts. They first attacked those illogicity. By attacking those illogicities, then they found that it cannot be true. So therefore, they certainly cannot be mythical. So that is the point. So here, when we are trying to reconstruct or release the quote unquote ahistorical, they are historical but mythicized, transformed into ahistorical. So they are really historical but transformed into ahistorical by the process of mythicization, and they can be historicized. So this process of historicization is a political, cultural, and historical necessity of the present day Dalit Bahujan Adivasis. So for that, need to reread, rescue, and rewrite. The text need to be reread, rescued, and rewritten. So we have to highlight how the illogicities went into in the creation of the Asura and Rakshasas, and we need to see to what extent they can be presented as the real it says it has created three categories: spiritual one, highest, and man in the middle, animals in the depth. And another brahmanas, there were eight super spiritual beings: brahmana, Indra, Prajapati, Saumya, Gandharva, Yaksha, Rakshasa, and Pisasa. So contrast to that, in Gita, Vasudeva says, talks about forces, three forces, and he allots the second force that applies itself to develop the stupidity and that would lead to fatigue and induce actions for Yaksha and Rakshasa. So here two different texts. While in the first, the Rakshasa in the position of worshippers, in that in Gita they are in the different position. They are stupid people. So like that, there is an existing confusion between the texts that is pointed out by Al-Biruni. So after that, he came up with eight, classes of spiritual beings among the Hindus. You can see that. And in Matsya Purana, he found that is also allotted varnas to different sides. Eastern side to Brahmins, north side to Kshatriya, south is yellow to Vaishyas. Eastern side is white to Brahmanas, north is red to Kshatriyas, south is yellow to Vaishyas, west is black to Sudras. So that is also quite, according to him, is like, how did that happen? So what is the logic in the colors to sides, different directions? Now, Pule, if you look at, Pule was trying to, in slavery, Pule was trying to put this counter narrative in slavery, and he has understood the Aryans as Vipras and Upadhyas, the local Brahminical names, and then he was trying to understand, give the name Kshatriya.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Your voice is breaking. Yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, got disconnected.
Okay. Okay. Meantime, participants can raise your questions in the live text. There is a chat box. There you can text your question so that sir will be responding to it. Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Hello, are we still on?
No, sir, your screen is not visible.
Yeah, let me stop talking. Should I talk more?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I will talk to the camera. I will not share anything.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that is so. So, uh, so the Pule certainly had laid the foundation for the counter narrative. He has attacked the narratives of of the Vedic Puranic text and tried to present these people as the native rulers who are in a conspiracy or killed by the Vedic Aryans. He said like all the Puranas are the avatars he attacked and tried to place them in a different names. Say Matcha is the canoes, the fastest on the sea. It's a boat kind of thing, and the Kurma is a Kurma tortoise is a bigger boat, bigger in size, but traveled slowly, by which the Aryans traveled over to the Western Sea, landed in the West Coast. So, what Periyar was trying to do, he was trying to locate the Quranic texts and their meanings, like Kurma, what can be Macha Avtara, what can be Kurma Avtara. So he was trying to, they are not fish or not tortoise, it's a boat, a small boat and a big boat. In the small boat, they can come quick, in the big boat, they'll come because of its size, they'll certainly come slow. So this way he was trying to look into. So it is like, what nonsense Macha Avtara, what nonsense Kurma Avtara. So it is actually not that. It is a boat. They were coming in a boat, and that one is bigger. If it is Macha, it is small boat where it can travel fast. If it is Kurma, it's a bigger boat. Certainly, it will travel slow because it was not mechanized. So, like that, he was trying to locate the avatars within the historical context. And he questioned the absurdities of the various avatars, starting from Macha, Kurma, Varaha, Narsimha, lion head, and human body, and dot. Apart from that, we also try to locate the entire context or the conflicts between the Aryans and Dravidians between the rulers. That is, Macha is Sankasura. So Macha, whoever is the ruler, was fighting with Sankasura. Kacha or the Kurma was fighting with Kashyapa. Varaha, Narsimha, is fighting with Hiranyakasipa. Vamana was involved in war with Baliraja and as well as his son Banasura. So, if you look at this, certainly you would understand Pule was not agreeing to the descriptions or the textual narratives that are presented to us. So, if you look at the way they are fighting with each other at different levels, at different objectives are determining the wars. So from Matsya to Varaha, the conflict seems to be political, but from Narsimha onwards, it seems to be a different, an imposition of culture. So Narsimha, Prahlada, or Prahlada is a worshipper of Narsimha, where his father Hiranyakasipa opposing him. That's what even Ambedkar also believes, that it's an imposition of culture. So he was trying to attract, the Aryan culture is trying to attract Prahalada, who belongs to a Dravidian culture, and his father is opposing it. So he points out the unfairness of the, his attracting his son towards the culture, and he opposes it. But that story is presented as that the worshipper of son who is attracted by the Narsimha, but he is opposed by his father. So father need to be, so father is the devil, father is the demon. Even he is not showing concern on his son, so he is ready to kill his son. So this kind of narratives are very Pule is seeing them as a cultural imposition, a cultural, even Ambedkar also says same. It's a cultural imposition. So that's how we have to look at. So if you do not agree to the narrative that is present to us and counter it, then you'll try to understand the possible real reasons why there was this episode of Hiranyakasipa. What is this episode of Hiranyakasipa? Should we go on with the narrative that is told to us by the majoritarian cultural forces, or we need to look at different ways? So therefore, the Pule has already provided the method of trying to look at differently. Later, Ambedkar also did the same, that they have not agreed that Hiranyakasipa is a demonic ruler. He was trying to protect his culture, he's trying to protect his language, and is trying to protect his religion by not letting his son to go into the Aryan culture. So that's how Periyar also looking at it. So Periyar also gone to the providing different Diwali reasons for Diwali. So why do we celebrate Diwali? We know majority culture gave us why should you celebrate Diwali, and in that also there are various regional variations across the so Ravana has a pan-Indianness, and Narakasura has a pan-Indianness, Mahisasura has a pan-Indianness, but in terms of why do you celebrate Dasara and Diwali, there are regional variations. So that regional variations are also never explained why. Then secularization and imposition of majority culture on others. So what is the secularization? Secularization of Dasara and Diwali, for example. When it is understood that India is a composite culture, and if you want everybody to celebrate Diwali and Dasara, everybody, almost everybody to celebrate, of course, even Christians and Muslims are in a way to prove that they are secular, they celebrate it, they participate it. So they're supposed to, in a sense, prove that they are secular. Others, in fact, rest of the people need not have to prove that secular. It is inbuilt that they are secular if they're not raising any objections to the cultural festivals that are celebrated by. If you're not participant in that, don't write objections. Not raising objections itself is very magnanimous. So therefore, I am cultural. I am secular. So if I don't object to your culture, I am secular. I need not to be participant in that. But that is not the case with the Muslims and Christians. They are bound to be part of the majoritarian culture. Secularization is actually is that a simultaneous interpretation or simultaneous narratives of what is Dasara and Diwali. That is, for example, Diwali is the festival of lights and prosperity, and Dasara is good is winning over the evil. So these are the secular interpretations, but in actuality, totally they are not secular. Simultaneously, they exist. But the Puranic and Vedic interpretations of Dasara Diwali exist, as well as secular also exists. So therefore, when it is not a celebration. Diwali is not a celebration of Rama killing Ravana, and it is actually lights, festival of lights and prosperity. So why don't you participate in it? So what is the big deal about it? It is neither Hindu nor any kind of festival. So it's a festival of lights. Lighting lamp is not a big problem anyway. So therefore, you're part of it. You can be part of it. You should be, quote unquote, you should be part of it. Then in that secularization simultaneously or automatically leads to the universalization of the or providing pan-Indianness to the Hindu dominant culture. Then apart from this, if you look at Diwali and Dasara, it also took the turn of when the capitalism became a major force of deciding the production in this country, consumption in this country. The Diwali and Dasara are also appropriated by the neoliberal capitalism, and it has transformed these festivals into the big festivals, so where everybody can enjoy. So they will not, in fact, traditions for them are important areas of promoting the consumption. So Diwali and Dasara are two important areas where the capitalism find it very interesting, and then they can in different ways they can promote. Even they go into the festival, the content of the festival, definition of the festival, interpretation of the festival. They won't define it and to suit to their interest and promote that. So the majoritarian, because most of the capitalism in this country is need not have to tell you that it is capitalist forces are majoritarian forces. So they have no problem with that. But Pule has an alternative Dasara and Diwali for the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis. So Pule says that he locates the Dasara Diwali within the conflicts between Bali, Vamana, and the Banasura. Dasara Diwali, he locates within this the conflicts between Bali, Banasura on one side and Vamana on the other. So, what is Dasara for Aryans? So, for him, Aryan Dasara is that Aryans are celebrating the death of Mahabali, where after Vamana won over Mahabali, Vamana comes to his home along with his soldiers, and their ladies welcome him, and they the process of festival, they keep an idol of Bali on the front of the home, and when they're entering into the home, they will kick it and break it and enter into the home. So this is celebration of Dasara by the audience, according to Pule. But he has a different version of Dasara for Dravidians or the Kshatriyas, what we use the word Kshatriyas. So Dasara for them is where Vamana stopped the onslaught of Banasura stopped the onslaught of Vamana, and in the middle of the war he comes along with his soldiers, and their ladies welcome them, and they enjoy the way they stop. They enjoy, they welcome, they appreciate the war they fought against Vamana. So that is Dasara for Dravidians, according to Pule. And he also gives reasons for Diwali. So Diwali, Kshatriya version of Diwali or a Dravidiya version of Diwali, according to him, is that Banasura defeating Vamana. After Banasura defeating Vamana, Banasura comes back home and he throws a party. And he gives raising to all his soldiers, and he appreciates all his soldiers. They enjoy with the sweets, food, and everything. So these are the versions of Diwali and Dasara that are existing in Pule's slavery. How many of us know? Many of us would not know. Whether they're right or wrong, whether they're historical or not, but that was also not historical. Point is that we are made to believe one version for a reason of festivity that went on for centuries together, while simultaneously from 19th century in a text, reasons for people to celebrate, especially Dravidians or the today's Dalit Bahujan Adivasis to celebrate. These are not the reasons. You cannot celebrate the death of your own ruler. So, but from 19th century in slavery, these alternative reasons for festivities for Dalit Bahujan Adivasis are already existing. But then the focus, to this extent, focus was not gone into this text. So now we can see that Rama killing Ravana cannot be a reason for the Diwali or Dasara for the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis. Pule already given you an alternative, so where you have to celebrate. So time and day and all those things can be decided. He also mentioned the time and day. So like that, the point is that apart from questioning the illogicalities and the illogicities in the text that are existing in the narratives, Pule also goes to the cultural, providing you culture. where he gives you a culture. So that culture can be adopted and can be rebuilt. So this is counterculture. Pule has a lot of counterculture possibility. He offers the possibility of constructing the counterculture. And that's so Deepavali Dasra, if you are interested, Deepavali Dasra, according to the Pule, you can construct and celebrate. So that is the counter. So anyway, so that is it. Opportunity for the counterculture, building of the counterculture is there in Pule's text. Ambedkar believed that ancient India history must be exhumed. That means it has to be, re-studied and re-understood. If you look, it says, without exhumation, ancient India will go without history. Much of ancient history of India is no history at all. This is what Ambedkar says. It's not mean that ancient India has no history. It has plenty, but it lost its character. It has been made mythology to amuse women and children. It seems to have done deliberately by the Brahminical writers. So by the mythicization, the ancient Indian history lost its character, historical character. So that needs to be exhumed and rewritten. That's what he was saying. So he approaches the history of ancient India from the side of racial theory, from the side of untouchability, from the side of long ways. He says that entire Indian history, if you look at the pre-Aryan history, there was one long ways called Tamil. Both that was actually there was no Dravida Aryan race. There was one single race. Well, the Naga race was the original race. That was, but the Naga race has gone under the influence of the Sanskrit. It lost its originality, while the Dravidians have stuck to their original language called Tamil. But Tamil was the original language of the pre-Aryan India, and that was existing from Kanyakumari to Kamara. So that's what Ambedkar says. So Ambedkar has problems with the descriptions of Asuras. Take the name of Asura. The description of Asura given in Mahabharata and Ramayana make out as though they belongs to non-human world. An Asura is described to eat 10 pots load of food. They are monsters in size. They sleep for 6 months. They have 10 mouths. So this is the description given to them that is pointed out by Ambedkar, given to Asuras in the Vedic text. So this says this is unfair, and this is why a history of ancient India need to be assumed. Similarly, Periyar, though there are a lot what Ambedkar says about them, but I cannot go out into those details. Periyar certainly is one essay that he spoke about Rama and Ravana. So he does not agree with the Vedic and Puranic descriptions of Asuras or Rakshasas. So he is a bit radical in, his radicality is well known to this country. Of course, my Ambedkar also is born in Manusmriti. So Ambedkar is a bit of sophisticated in the academic language, but not in rejecting the narratives of the Vedic Puranic texts on the Asuras and Rakshasas. Periyar is radical. Radical dismisses that the usage of the Rakshasa, and he present Ravana as a protector of his people, and especially the people and his forest. When the people came to do yajnas and burning his country, burning his kingdom, killing his animals, he becomes an environmentalist. Ravana becomes an environmentalist, and he tried to protect his country. So Periyar certainly goes to the extent of trying to point out how unethical unethical are the gods and characters. The description of the character, their actions are unethical, immoral, all the Vishnu, Krishna, and Tirumala, he went on to all these people and tried to point out their unethical characters. So after that, if you look at uh, what has happened in the 2011, that's a beginning, or in the what is the beginning of the present day, the construction of the counterculture, beginning of the construction of the counterculture, beginning of the counter narrative started in 19th century with Pule, but the construction of the counterculture started in 2011. So, but however, it does not mean that the counterculture is existing. As I've already pointed out, that in Kerala as a regional culture, it is existing, worshipping of Mahabali. In Tamil Nadu, it is already existing. In North India, there are people who are worshipping Ravana, Mahasasura, Narakasura, especially Adivasis and Bahujans also worshipping Narakasura, Mahasasura. But as a combined effort, what happened here in 2011, what is speciality about the Mahasasura celebrations in Jawaharlal Nehru University is that a new agency is becoming conscious about climbing its culture. It was busy being intellectual, producing stories and producing literary, theoretical work and all that stuff, analysis, all that stuff. But today, in 2011, it became an agency that understood that it is important to climb your culture. So after that, when prior to that, you can see throughout India, as I've already pointed out, celebration of Dasara, Diwali, which is actually celebration of gods winning over the Asuras and Rakshasas. That's what is the real. But then you can have different kind of interpretations. But that is not the point. So what is that? The homogenization of it, or making into a pan-Indian cultural across castes and across communities is already an existing practice, a cultural practice. So to counter that, you need to be courageous, and it took some time to enter into the arena of building the counterculture. So for example, in schools, especially in Andhra, where I was studying in my school till 5th standard, there's in Dasara, during Dasara, Vinayak Chaturthi and Dasara celebrated in the schools also, like we do it in the universities and schools. So it is normalized to such extent that it becomes compulsory for a school and college or university, to the extent universities, to celebrate Dasara. So Dasara becomes everybody's festival. So since it has gone to the extent of school, even small kids, why are they celebrating? They do not know. They would not know Ravana and Rama, or Durga Devi, Mahasasura. They would not know. What they know is that it's some festival. When I was kid, I would not know why I was celebrating. There was a festival that I have written in one of the articles. There is elaborated festival that we all go into the schools. School children go to each and every student's home, and we throw something called patri. It's a mix of all leaves, important leaves. So then we go on. We get whatever given by the parents of the student. Parents of the student give something to the teacher. On that day, teacher will collect something. So this normalization, where even why are you celebrating Dasara does not come. Even many villagers would not understand why are you celebrating. But so it has gone to the extent of impacting the minds of the schools. It's a major narrative. So that was countered for the first time. Even we all know that as educated people, we celebrate Dasara, Diwali, especially Dasara in the institutions. So that became also very normalized practice, despite knowing that even in the government-sponsored institutions. So abnormalities never understood, never questioned. So So when it started in 2011 in Jawaharlal University, then it spread to different areas, especially movement so picked up in the North India, where there are already the major Adivasi belt in northwestern India. They already started celebrating. The number of celebrations, the participations, the meetings have increased. In South, of course, already in 1974, Ram Leela, counter to Ram Leela, Ravana Leela is already started by Mariammai here. The South is not actually behind, but as I pointed out, as a single whole, a composite whole, conscious effort of constructing the counterculture was not started. So, genuine movement by the Bahujan Adivasis, the celebration of ASURA as a counter to the Dasara festival in the university, as a beginning point. After that, entire Dalit Bahujan Adivasis of entire India have responded, and quickly that turned into a sort of an opportunity for the counterculture. So everybody started participating in it, and then the intellectuals, Dalit Bahujan Adivasis intellectuals, are looking into it. What is this? So are there any alternatives? So when you look back to Pule, certainly there is an alternative. When you look into the northwestern culture of the Adivasis, certainly there is an alternative. And that alternative, as I found out, is actually historical, in a sense that the leaders of the Adivasis who are actually allowing the celebration or developing the culture of celebrating their ancestors, they found that it is not the celebration of the mythical character. Ravana, Narakasura, Mahishasura for us is not a mythical character. He is a historical character for whom we are not worshipping, but we are reading, understanding. Historically, we are understanding him. So there will be meetings, there will be no celebrations, though there are temples are there. But however, the educated are not allowing their larger constituency called Adivasi, generally even uneducated Adivasis, they are trying to bring into the new cultural pattern where we don't celebrate, we don't worship, we read, we understand, we try to understand who is Ravana, who is Narakasura, who is Mahishasura. So like that, from 2011, there is this conscious effort to build the counterculture that might be a possibility in course of time. So anyway, so even Periyar, as I mentioned, that he have gone to the extent of building the alternative narrative, and he is radical. Narayana Guru has in fact has said that in 1911 and 1914, I believe 1914, he said, like, if I am, he was a guru in a sense. So he's a sage. In 1914 itself, he said that if I was Sambuka in Ramaraja, I also could have been killed. So that is the position of Narayana Guru. So which means he is very conscious about what is what. And his disciple Sahodaran Ayyappan also as opposed when Madan Mohan Malavya went to Kerala in 1920 and raised the slogan of Sri Ram. He said a leader or a ruler who killed Sambuka cannot be the leader of us. So this statement was made by Ayyappan, Sahodaran Ayyappan. So like that, there was alternative narratives are available. Alternative culture need to be constructed, and we need to look at the possibilities of the alternative culture. So, but in the process of building that alternative culture for the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis, one need to be careful that to the larger extent, to the maximum extent, you need to be careful that the culture that you build cannot be illogical, abnormal, and it has to be democratic. It has to be a culture that accommodates everybody, and certainly need to be historical. So in a sense that, as I've already pointed out, that in the Kerala made provided an example by reimagining Mahabali as a person who is not so mythical. He became historical in a sense, maybe first step towards that. And Adivasis in North India, as I already pointed out, they're celebrating their historical heroes, not worshipping them. So they're reading their history, their understanding, imparting the learning, imparting the knowledge on their historical heroes to their children. So discussions or debates are taking place in northwestern, among the tribals of northwestern India. So they are not being worshipped. The Narakasura, Mysasura are not being worshipped, but they are trying to understand them as historical. So eventually, I would say that it is possible for us, possible for the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis to build the pre-Aryan historical communities as the historical communities, and look back into Ambedkar, Phule, and Periyar, Narayana Guru, what they have said, what they have written, and based on those foundations, try to build the historical, build the counterculture that might offer us the opportunity to build identities, and these identities can be used to fight for the cultural, religious, quote unquote, because they're not religious in a sense, cultural, social, economic, and political justice. So thank you very much for listening. I'll stop here.
Yes, thanks a lot, sir. You have given a historical narrative that how the ASURA has become the cultural identity of Dalit, Bahujan, and Adivasis of India. So here we have a few questions in our chat box, and before going to read that, if any of the viewers ask any questions related to the webinar, the title ASURA, the cultural identity of Dalit, Bahujans, and Adivasis of India, you can text in the live text box. So it is there below the YouTube live video where you are watching. You can comment them. So here the first question is from Dr. Chitra. She has a doubt that how to eradicate the through Periyar ethics, and then how to change the people mind. That is the question we got in the chat box. So I think your mic is in mute.
So in the chat box, we don't see any question. But
yeah, no, it's
question
there.
that you have read out to me is not. So I am in Zoom or what?
Yeah, we are in Zoom. The question was in YouTube. The question is. So
I can't see it. You'll only be reading it.
Yeah. How to eradicate?
Okay, so
yeah, how to eradicate the concept of superstition through Periyar?
What is that?
And then how to eradicate the concept of superstition through Periyar ethics, and then how to change the people mind.
It's not clear. Your mic is not clear.
Yeah, just a minute. I'll just text you so that you can see in the chat box.
Yeah. Anyway, let that question be. I will read and respond. If there are any other questions, let them. Chat box, okay. Chat box, one question: how to eradicate the superstitions through Periyar ethics? How to change the people mind? See, see, this is actually the eradication through Periyar ethics. Yes, it is possible. How, in the sense that it is the Periyarist followers of the Periyarist. First of all, they have to set an example by strictly following Periyarism. Unless and until Periyar is not alive to I tell that you are not doing what I say. So the soldiers, the responsibility of promoting prayerism as a philosophy against superstitions will fall on the people who are the followers of prayerism, and their life becomes an example for the rest to follow. Especially people minds, especially the superstitions as a culture, essentialized culture. It is not the culture that you can leave at any point of time, but unfortunately people, gullibles in the sense people who do not have enough resources to meet the problems of life, automatically we pushed into believing in things which they should not be believing. There, as I told you, that it is very difficult for them to leave the superstitions. Unless and until the superstitions, to remove the superstitions, you need to be economically developed. Otherwise, it is very difficult. It is the economic lack of adequate economic resources to believe, make you believe things that are not true. So one is that if you are economically, say, well equipped in the sense you have decent resources to deal with your life, you would not want any superstitions. That is number one. Second is, to deal with those things, prayerism is important. That need to be promoted by the prayerist or any educated person who read prayer, that there is a possibility of peaceful life if you follow prayerism, or if you avoid superstitions. Superstitions give you pain and suffering, nothing more than that. So therefore, if you wanted to avoid them, you need to produce counters, or to provide consciousness, explain what is what, because it is provided as culture. Just economic resources, adequate economic resources may not sometimes work against superstitions. People simply would not leave them alone. But however, if you rationally explain, that's what prayer does, rationally explain. So these two things should simultaneously do. One is that adequate economic resources should be there. On the other side, you need to explain the illogicalities inbuilt in the superstitions that are anti-Dalit, anti-Bahujan, anti-Shudra, anti-woman, anti-child. All those things need to be explained. If these two things go together, certainly the superstitions in a time period certainly would go.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So there is a question that we have from our groups we got, that how come celebrating asuras will be the right point when it is myth, when it is becoming a myth? It's a story written in some shastras, Puranas, Vedas, and celebrating asuras, how it will be scientific? It will become superstition.
Yeah. So that's how I pointed out. It is very difficult to release the asura. Asura is not asura, is Dravidian. Point that we need to first of all understand, that we are not celebrating asura, but as the majority narrative given to us as asura, let us understand as asura. But we are already pointing in the main emphasis was on they are not asuras or rakshasas. Asuras are names, Vedic names or mythological names given to gods as Sura, and the Aryans as Suras, Dravidians as Asuras. So now when we are trying to culturally understand, historically understand, if you say Dravidian kings and myth translating into reality, or it may not sink well. So first of all, we have to go use the same words. So we are not agreeing that they are asuras. We have not agreed that they are asuras. They are not asuras. They are Dravidian rulers, the pre-Aryan rulers who are transformed into asuras. Accepting the word asura is for cultural purpose, that make people believe that look, they were given those names, but those names are not real. So keep that name as it is and try to say that it is not what it is. That's the point here. So it is not celebration of Asura. When you are celebrating historical Dravida or historical Naga, But when it comes to culturally understanding, we are using the word Asura. So we don't say Ravana is Asura or Rakshasa. He is a pre-Dravidian, pre-Aryan ruler, native ruler. That's it.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Burning the Vedas, Puranas, and Shastras, it got burned the Smriti, as well as their movement. So they have burned everything. So
No,
what kind
it's
of impact it will
echoing.
make in the society?
It is echoing. The question is not clear. The mic is echoing.
So am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So what kind of impact that the burning Shastras?
Yeah, burning Shastras will have on. Yes, the question is off read.
Yeah, actually, sorry, sir, there's a technical problem I'm facing here. Power cut is here. So, yeah, what kind of impact the burning the Shastras and Puranas will make in the society?
I don't think it will have a big impact, but it is only an act of rejection. An act of rejection, but it's major, as I told you that. So, how many understand burning Manusmriti or breaking ideal of Ganesha would have an impact in a sense. Like many of the people are not connected, not known. How many Dalit Bahujan Adivasis knows that Ambedkar has burned Manusmriti? Not many of them. So this is where the disconnection between, in fact, in my article in that uh, the volume, I've said that there is in university there are these metropolitan subaltern, and in the villages and semi-towns we have peripheral subaltern. So peripheral subalterns and metropolitan subalterns, though could be one and same, but their engagement with each other is very less. So therefore, you read Periyar, you understand, you don't propagate. That means it has to be translated into a sort of a conscious promoting program, not among those people who understand what you say, but among those people who don't understand what you say. In a sense that we have to develop a different language and tell it to the people in the villages or in the semi-towns that this is what the pay is. So therefore, the acts of rejection, acts of protest might not translate into a larger change, but however, they were just acts of rejection. That acts of rejection, if the latter communities, of intellectual communities or educated communities who are developing consciousness, make them big in a sense that take them as an act of rejection. That why, if it is holy, why it is burned? What is the reasons? You have to explain the reasons even to uneducated person. So they do not know. So you ask any uneducated, when did this happen? And so no, I do not know. So when did this happen? I do not. So such kind of questions you can face from many people. So which means Ambedkar burning Manusmriti, even if it becomes a news, the only people who reads it understand. And even if people see it, I found it very difficult. Even the highly educated Dalit Bahujan Adivasis are still caught under the majoritarian cultural structures. They are not able to come out of it. Even if someone saw that, someone read the news about Ambedkar has burned it, burned Manusmriti, they would not raise question, what is Manusmriti, why did he burn? Because they are already, they do not know what is Manusmriti. They do not, to a larger extent, even if he is Dalit Bahujan Adivasi, they do not know Ambedkar. Then the act of protest or the rejection comes into. So therefore, unless and until Ambedkar is promoted, Manusmriti is made to understood, What is Hinduism is made to understood, discriminative systems of Hinduism is made to understood. Then otherwise, these acts of rejection would only become a sort of things that are to be done for the intellectual world to understand, or the educated world to understand. Educated is also quote in quote. Educated in the sense, not all Dalit Bahujan educated understand what is Ambedkar, even Periyar, and what is. So therefore, there's almost 50% of the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi educated are unconnected to the culture of protest and culture of rejection, or the culture of your own. So these three areas, they are not connected. They are still in the larger majoritarian mainstream culture. No, you're not.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
yes, sir. Now,
Yeah.
yes, sir. So, thank you for joining us the webinar on ASURA, the cultural identity of Dalit Bahujan Adivasis of India. So we have narrated the prehistorical, how it happened, how the Aryan version and how the Dravidian version, and how our leaders and forefathers, they have tried to create a counter culture for the Dalit Bahujan Adivasis of India. So thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So for the
So
audience,
yeah,
yes, sir, please.
tell me. Tell me.
Yeah, if the audience wish to buy the book online, so it is available in Amazon. You can buy the Oxford Press publication also, Dr. Ambedkar's Quest for Justice. So it's published by the Oxford Press, and as well as Dr. Srinivasa Rao's a new book published in Amazon Kindle. You can see that Subaltern Speaks. It's published by Carter Publications. The link in the description box, you can find it. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I thank Periyar Screen for giving. If it is recorded, you please send me the link. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sure. It's there in live. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, sir.